speaking with us today. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you, Ms. Norton. I know her because my son was here. He's a junior now in Cal Arts. He's a guitarist and composer, and then took bio, and this is one of his favorite teachers, I can tell you, sincerely. She's awesome. So thank her every day. But so I took an unusual path to getting to med school. How many people here are thinking about something in healthcare? And, is there a lot of people here that why they're in bio? And then when I first went to school, I thought that I was going to do plant stuff of some sort, and that lasted a quarter. And I took an art class and thought it was great, so I transferred into the College of Arts, and I wound up with a BFA. So I graduated undergrad, took 6 years. I was on the slow plan to do it, and got out with a BFA. I had taken, fortunately, it turns out, I didn't know it at the time, but I had taken I'd taken a year's worth of math, so I had a bunch of sort of high-level math done, and I'd taken a couple biology classes. Oh, and I'd taken organic chemistry, which was great, just because I had signed up for it for my first year. And I went to Ohio State. I'm from Cincinnati. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio State. And then, but I got out. I put myself through school by waiting tables, and got out. I was waiting tables. I didn't really have a plan. I had bought a few really cheap rundown houses and rehabbed them, and sold those and paid for school. And then all of a sudden, I don't know how it happened, but I was somehow in my head, I thought, maybe doctor would be a good thing. And I thought maybe I'd be into sports medicine because I was kind of into sports sort of at the time, but not really. And so I thought that would be my plan. And it turns out to get into med school, you don't have that many prerequisites. It's a thing you have to have a certain amount of things. You have to have organic chemistry, so I had that. You have to have physics, your physics. I didn't have that, so I had to go back and take physics and what we called cat anatomy. So it's different in every school, but we call it cat anatomy because you dissected a cat and had to do everything. Cat anatomy for me was torture. I'm not good at memorization. My brain works funny in that way. I can remember some things really, really well. I remember people. I remember if I see a patient in room 6, and I remember their family. I remember their story. But I can't remember my nurses' names. It's embarrassing. I mean, it's awful. I don't, and I can't quite understand. So memorizing things like anatomy for me is really hard because it's straight up memorizing names. It was really hard, but I made it through. The physics, AP, probably some of you take AP stuff. It turns out that back then I would start the physics class and then I just couldn't do it. It was torture. And I dropped it. I did that twice, and then I decided, well, I wonder if I could take the AP test to get out of it. So I did. So I went out, but, and I'm not sure how that happened exactly, but I mean, I can test well. I'm lucky that way, which was good. I just took, one of the things you have to do in medicine in general for pretty much every field has something like this. In emergency medicine, when you get out, I'll go forward and back. When you get out, to get through, to do medicine, so I got in, and then the MCATs. To get into med school, you take the MCATs. There's a big test you have to take to get into graduate school. For law school, it's the L something, and for graduate school, it's the G something, and ours is the M something. So we took the MCATs, and I did well on that. And again, it's in part because I test well, and I studied for it. You get the books, and at that time it was just you get a book and you go through the questions, and half the questions you see, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this sort of on tests you've taken, that you do in practice, they're almost the same as what you take. And I can remember those and did pretty well, and I can guess well, I think, which I just took every 10 years in my field, you have to take a recertification test. When you first get out, you take oral boards, so you go into a room well, actually go from room to room, and you have to do about 5 scenarios where you go in and they say your patient just rolled into the ER and they're can't breathe, and what are you going to do? And so then you have to orally respond, and that's 1 year, and then the next year you take the written boards, and the written boards are about a 8-hour test where you just sit in, crank through. I just took, every 10 years you have to repeat, as long as you keep current, you have to repeat your written part, and I just did that. So I just finished. It was torture. It really was. Because it wasn't clear to me that I was going to make it. It was, I had this, you have to get a 75% pass, and I actually did the best I've done on it, so it was good. But it was, it was hard, and the problem is there's about half of it that actually pertains to what I do, and then the other half is just memorizing ridiculous stuff that at this day and age especially, but always you would just look up. So it didn't really apply. But you have to keep current. So if you're going to do the doctor thing, staying current is really important. And I have every 3 years I have to say that I did 75 hours of continuing education. So you always have to be doing education thing, which in any thinking field, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're, frankly, when you're doing the test, like this year I took the test, it was just downtown here, which was nice, because on the computer I didn't have to fly to Chicago like we used to. And there would be, in the testing room, next to me was a woman who was taking her test for hair. She's like a hairstylist. So everyone has to take tests to get certified. Plumbers have to take tests. So being able to take a test is helpful. Anyway, you have to keep doing education stuff. And I got into med school. I went to University of Cincinnati, which wound up to be lucky. At the time, I thought I wanted to go to Ohio State. I was living there, I had a house, it would be easy. I applied to Ohio State and Cincinnati, which this day and age you wouldn't apply to just 2 schools, but I just applied to 2 schools. And fortunately, Cincinnati was ahead of its time in their thinking, and they were looking for students who weren't just a straight bio kind of student, which is more true nowadays. There's still a huge chunk of students who come out and they're just your sort of standard. They did biology in undergrad and they have all the usual bio things, but they started to realize, and this was, so I've been doing medicine for 22 and a half years. I've been a doc here, residency for 3 years, so that's 25, and then 4 years of med school, so 29 years ago. And they were just starting to figure that out. Cincinnati was way ahead of everyone, and my class was a big class, 200 people, and we had people who were like me, who were artists. We had people who were, had a couple who were gymnasts that did we had this talent show every year, and the talent that you would see would be phenomenal. And people came from all sorts of backgrounds. There was a semi-pro baseball player, there was an opera singer, there was, so it was this big variety of people. And so when I interviewed there, they liked the fact that I was doing different things, that I was waiting tables and trying to do it on my own. It worked out well, and I had good enough scores that it happened. I think nowadays they're definitely still looking for that, and they're looking for, I didn't do the stuff that would be standard nowadays, where people are doing volunteer stuff for, in hospitals to show that that's what they want to do. I didn't do that. I don't think the volunteer gig was as important back in the day, which part of it's, I think, good that it's really good that people are doing that, to look and see what they're doing. I had no idea what I was getting into at all, and I think that'll be true for lots of stuff you do, unless you really shadow someone. But I didn't know what I was getting into. I'm lucky in that it turned out that I love what I do, and you'll find, unfortunately right now, lots of people in medicine, the classic story is, well, I wouldn't tell my kids to be a doctor. There's this big turmoil that's been going on, 10 years probably, as far as this whole dissatisfaction with medicine. And I get it. I think a lot of it's driven by, it's driven by a couple different things. medicine right now is in obviously crazy turmoil. If you all you have to do is look at the paper and see what's going on with insurance and the Obamacare thing and all of that. And I'm coming from a little more of on the liberal side of things, and so it depends on where you are on the spectrum as to how happy you are with things, I think, right now. Unfortunately, I think that the way we do medicine financially in this country is crazy, and it's been crazy forever. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and the way we spend money on it doesn't make any sense. And frankly, the way people take care of themselves in this country doesn't make any sense. So it's from every direction, and there are a lot of docs who are sort of working harder and getting paid less, and so I think that's some of the frustration that you'll see. If you go into medicine, there'll always be a job, pretty much. I mean, medicine is not going to get smaller if you go in, and if you go into a number of fields of medicine, you'll get paid well. And this is a question everyone wants to know. So my niece just sent me an email. I don't know what it was for, but she had to do some project where she needed to interview someone, and so she wanted to interview me, and it was just an email list of questions, and one of the questions is, so how much does a starting ER doc make? And so a starting ER doc it depends on what part of the country, because it's very different where it is. Different areas of the country pay, it's a pretty big range, but it's still, you would be making somewhere, I told her, between $180,000 and $200,000 to start out of the chute. And you can make up to, it depends on what the deal is, but ER docs we're sort of in the middle of the pack as far as money, which is part of the reason we're not as affected. So docs who've been making gobs of money, and that would be specialists in surgical fields for the most part. So surgeries, the way the payment system works is for procedures you get paid more. So radiologists who do procedures, cardiologists who do procedures, orthopedic surgeons, brain surgeons, all those people. If you do procedures, you get paid a lot for the procedures. Whereas the way our deal works is we get paid for each visit, and it's $60 for a low-level visit, and if I save someone's life, we get maybe $400. Whereas an orthopedic surgeon, when they do their hip case, they get $5,000, which I've never quite understood. It doesn't make sense. And I don't, my end, it doesn't seem like enough money. I make plenty of money. I mean, more money, I didn't do it, I didn't think about the money at all when I went in. And I don't think when you look at what you want to do, thinking about money is a good plan. It's good to know you're going to be able to make a living. That's important. And having food on the table and something over your head matters. And then after that, everything's gravy. And so it's nice to have good cash flow happening. I would not say otherwise, but I can't say that I'm more happy now than when I went to school. I was broke. I was broke. And it's kind of I was so broke in undergrad that I actually sold blood twice, but then it creeped me out. I couldn't do it again. It was too weird. But I ate peanut butter on white bread and macaroni and cheese for a couple of years. And it was the macaroni and cheese in the white boxes. You could get 5 for $1. So it was fine. But I was having fun. It didn't matter. And so but I had a roof over my head. I was fed. And so it worked out. And the things that matter, I just talked to someone yesterday who's in healthcare, a good friend of mine, who I'd seen for a couple months. And I said, Mary, how you doing? She goes, well, not good. And I said, why is that? Well, I hate my job, and I hate my life, and I feel like my life force is getting sucked out of me. Mary. And so it matters what you do. Because what you do, you'll probably do for a long time. Now, it turns out people switch jobs a fair amount, but mostly you stay in kind of what you start out in, mostly. One of the great things about medicine is if you go in and, if you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, especially those two fields, you could do a lot of different things. There are lots of docs in nursing, for example, who start out and they do their doctor for a while, and then they decide, I can't do this anymore, I hate it, and they get a business degree. They spend not very much time, 1 year going back to, because once you've gotten your grad level stuff, you can go back to grad level stuff in almost anything will take you because you figure you're smart. And the thing is, you can take your, you can sort of parlay what you have been doing into another field. So there are lots of transitions that people make that aren't that hard. And even within, say, nursing, the doctor thing, you're kind of swatted. If you're going to be, I'm an ER doc, for me to switch would be hard. I'd have to go back and do a residency probably, and actually to get into the residency, turns out it's hard. And I only know that because my sister-in-law, coincidentally, I don't have many people in medicine in my family, but my brother married a doc, and she was ENT, ear, nose, and throat doctor, so surgical thing, and her first job was not very good. And I think because of that and the fact it really wasn't what she wanted to do, she wanted to be a dermatologist all her life. When she was young, she had a mentor, this old guy who was her dermatologist. She had lots of zits, and so she had this dermatologist who she loved. And she was in med school, and you have to decide what kind of residency you want to do pretty early on. So third year, you have to be figuring out, I want to be this kind of doctor, and then you do a residency. And so I did an ER residency, and she did an ENT residency, or you do some other surgical specialty residency, or you do a pediatrician residency. So she was trying to decide what residency, and two things happened. Someone told her, well, you're not smart enough to get into derm, and someone told her, well, they're not even real doctors. Why would you do that? And so she didn't do it. And both things were crazy, it turns out, obviously, because she's incredibly smart. When she took her certificate, well, every year in residency they have to do this test. It's a national test for all the ENT, this was for derm. All the derm docs in the country who are second-year residents take the same test. And I said, so how'd you do it? She would tell me. How'd you do it? You tell me. My brother told me she was 99th percentile, so I call her 99. But she obviously she's smart enough. And dermatologists, they don't just pop zits. They actually do some of the stuff that's cutting edge because they're working on immunologic stuff, and so there's you can do a lot of different things with it. And because she's a surgeon, she's still doing surgery, minor surgery with derm. But there's a lot of ways to go with it, and she loves her job now. But she was stuck in a job that just didn't work out very well. So you don't want to be stuck. If you have more education, it's less likely you'll be stuck. So education matters for the most part. You don't have to have a high-level education to get there. You have to work hard. Being agreeable helps because people remember you if you're a jerk. It will come back. So being nice matters. And but you really do want to try and figure out what it is you want to do. I got lucky, but on the other hand, I've always loved everything I've done. I just kind of have fun doing what I'm doing. So it works out that even when I've had what you would consider pretty crappy jobs, I still have fun. And part of it is making sure you're doing the best job you can with whatever it is you're doing, and not doing it just half-assed, because it doesn't give you any satisfaction. And I was going the lawn in the dark last night. Well, not last night, the night before last, because the snow was coming, right? And I was thinking after I was done, it was getting dark, you could barely see, but I was just thinking how gratifying that job was. Just having it done well, and I don't know, but it was good, and it wasn't any worse or better than what I'd done. I've had a busy week, a really unusually busy week. I worked Saturday night. So part of what the deal is in ER medicine is we're shift workers. It's like we're shift workers, like the factory guy. I work either 7 to 3, 3 to 11, or 11 to 7. Those are my shifts. And that's one of the things I like about it. It's kind of a cut-off thing, except that when it's really busy, I wind up staying late. And so this week I've stayed late almost every shift. Now, the way our group does it, we get paid for it, so it works out okay. But even if I, it's a longer shift, but, so typically 8-hour shifts, but this week I've been doing 10-hour shifts for the most part. And part of the reason ER docs get paid pretty well is we work nights, and we work weekends, and we work holidays. And so for those things, there's a premium. And, so this year, I'm off Thanksgiving. Tonight's my last shift, until a week from now. But I'll be working Christmas, and I worked last weekend. I worked Saturday night and Sunday night. And, but I've worked weekends and holidays all my life. I waited tables, and so the best nights to work were the weekends, and you work holidays. And so that's never been a big deal. You just adjust your schedule, and you think differently. And so for me, I would be working weekends, and so it meant that when Ben was in school, I could come and visit, and do stuff or whatever. So it's a different deal. And it's nice to know that that's how it's, I like it. But some people, shift work is torture. I'm lucky, I'm unusual in that I can work nights and it's not that hard on me. It's a little bit hard. When I get done, I worked Sunday night, and then it was a hard switch back. I was back to work Tuesday morning, so I worked Sunday night, and I came home Monday morning. I slept until noon, and then got up so that I would be tired, so I'd be able to fall asleep Monday night, so I could come to work and be at work at 7 Tuesday morning. And that flip back was like, sent my head spinning. It turns out as you get older, you're not supposed to be able to do that, and genetically I'm blessed, because I'm old, actually. I'm past the age that you're supposed to be able to do that. 50 is kind of the cutoff that they talk about. Is, after 50, being able to work nights and switch back and forth is hard. And for me, I can still do it, and I'm 56 now. So, which is like ancient, for sure. And I've been doing this a long time, so it's worked out well. So, this is from 3 years ago when I did this stuff. I found it. Awesome. But I like my job because for a bunch of reasons. A lot of variety. I never know what's going to walk in the door. This week was a great example of that. I had every kind of thing you can imagine. I get paid to help people, which is pretty extraordinary. It's a great job that way, because I feel like for some people I'm making a difference, and which I didn't have that classic I want to be a doctor to help people kind of thought in my head when I started out. I honestly really didn't. And I think a lot of people who say that, they really mean it. I just hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about any of it. I hadn't thought about how it was going to work, what it really would be, and I'm not telling you that's a good plan at all, because I think I just got lucky in how it worked out. But there's variety. You never know what you're going to see when you walk in, so that's good. I work out in Marconia and Chaska. I'm in the ER at both those places, and we have an unusual group. I was lucky enough to be in sort of the founding of the group when it started 23 years ago. And Rob Welch was an incredible mentor. He was the guy who founded the group, and there were 4 of us when we started. And the idea was to have a group where everyone was equal, everyone treated each other well. It's back in the day when there were more doctors who could be jerks than there are nowadays. There still are, but it's not like it used to be. It used to be docs would think that they were God or something, and so they'd be mean to the nurses, and they wouldn't communicate well, and they wouldn't treat people well. Our founding deal was we were different, and that wasn't and there's a lot of reasons for it. One is it just makes work more fun. 2 is it's the right thing to do, and then it turns out that it's safer, and we knew that early on. People were just starting to figure that out. If you collaborate with the people you work with in medicine in general, but in the ER specifically, and you're working with nurses who come up to you and feel like they can come up to you and say, what are you doing here? And because this is a bad plan, or that person over there is not working out well, and they let you know that there's a problem, it will make a difference. I mean, a big difference. Sometimes someone will live or die because someone told you that something was going badly, and maybe going badly because you screwed it up, or maybe going badly just because you didn't think of it. And it's especially true in my job. Where I work in Waconia, when I first started working, it was me and a night nurse and a transcriber, and that was it at 2 in the morning. The three of us, and there was no one else in the hospital, the nurses upstairs, there were no docs. So if you're in the cities, you've got like all these doctors and specialists and stuff, and so if things are going badly, you've got someone come down and help you and do stuff. And at that time, we didn't have anesthesiologists in-house. There were nurse anesthetists. I don't even know if they were there, but there was no one. So if things were going badly, you had no one to like go, well, what would you do? But you had a nurse, and most of the time you had a nurse who was really good and seen a bazillion things, and you turn to them and go, well, what do you think? And so that collaboration is really important, and it was just a great work environment, because the average ER doc, I think, at least when I started, their first job they would be in for 2 years, and then they would switch to somewhere else. So you'd kind of find a job to work in, then you'd find a job that you would like. And I got lucky. I've been there ever since it started. And medicine in the Twin Cities, specifically in Minnesota, is some of the best medicine in the world. People take it for granted. Medicine here is really good. You can get seen in any ER, and you'll get seen by someone who knows what they're doing almost every time. It's really good medicine in the Twin Cities, and people take it for granted. And it's because we have so many sort of institutions that just do good medicine. There's the U that does good stuff. Hennepin does amazing stuff for training. Mayo's obviously a big name in medicine. So there's a lot of good stuff going on. And it's unusual here. There's the medical device companies that sort of push things to the envelope, which is another medical field. I mean, there are docs who are involved in medical device things that, so again, that sort of gets back to having all these different options in medicine. So I bet you guys have questions. Anyone? I mean, I've got more I can just babble about, but any specific questions? Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, while you're in med school, do you aim to get a PhD and med at the same time?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what the situation, like, how crazy it was at all?
Well, so I mean, it's changed a little bit in both medicine, in med school and residencies. They're not doing. When I was a resident, and in med school, so for your third, in med school traditionally, and it's changed a little bit. First 2 years are class work, and second 2 years are clinical work. And nowadays, there's a little bit of blurring of that, and I think, I mean, it's hard just to do med school, and you would have to be willing to work really hard. And I mean, if there's enough overlap in what you were doing, it would work. And you would have to give up some stuff. There would not be much play, which I don't know if that's good, because it's important to be able to blow things off. If you'd have to be really smart. I mean, I was in the it's kind of an old joke, and I wasn't at the bottom of my class, but I was kind of in the middle. But the joke is what the person who graduates class in your med school class, what do you call him? You call him doctor. So, but by that time, by the time you've gotten to med school, everyone's pretty smart. I mean, it's been weeded out, so that it's a pretty smart cohort. But to be able to do that, you'd have to be up in that top little niche, which, I mean, my best friend was #1 in the class, and he had a good time. He was really smart. So he was somehow able to study quickly and remember everything and learn everything, and then play. So he would have had time, but you would have to be in that thing. And if for fun, doing whatever your PhD work would be at the same time, and that was fun, which it very much could be. You know, you want to make sure, especially in medicine, it's a people deal. Most of it, I mean, there are things you can go into, and that gets sorted out. So the classic person in medicine who's not very good with people or doesn't really want to talk with patients or whatever might go into pathology, because they're dealing with slides and cells and so in the lab, so they go into pathology, or maybe radiology. Although the radiologists I work with really like it when they actually get to see the patients and touch patients and interact with patients. They like